And so I felt like now was a good time to go back, first of all, tell you about the jobs that open, tell you about the guys that filled them, and go ahead and give grades to all of the coaching hires, okay? 13 hires in total at the Power Conference level, 2 in the ACC, 3 in the Big East, 1 in the Big 10, 1 in the Big 12, 0 in the Pac-12, 6 in the SEC. We'll go quick. I'll give you my grade. I'll tell you why I like each of them and why I don't like some of them. And it'll be fun. And I think it'll be a good refresher for you who ended up where, maybe some names that you forgot about, some names that you did know, some names that you don't know. And I'll go ahead and give you a grade on all of them. And I think what I'll do is I'll go conference by conference. I think that makes the most sense rather than jumping this guy gets an A in the Big 12, this guy gets a B+ in the SEC. We'll go conference by conference and go through all 13 hires. And I'll try to make it quick, because 13 hires is a lot to talk about here over the next few minutes. Let's start in the ACC. 2 hires, and really one of them doesn't even really count as a hire because it's Jon Scheyer. I am including Jon Scheyer at Duke replacing Coach K. We'll get to him in a minute. But let me start with Kenny Payne at Louisville. And if I'm giving Kenny Payne, I think everybody knows, right? But Kenny Payne, longtime Kentucky assistant, spent the last few years as an assistant coach with the New York Knicks, and now he's also a former Louisville basketball player. Now he has been named the head coach of Louisville basketball. And so obviously the concern with Kenny Payne is that he's never been a head coach before. And so we're not going to know about the concern, about the X's and O's, about the in-game decision-making, all that stuff. It's going to take a while. We're not going to know that until December, January, February, let alone 2022, 2023, 2024, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With that said, though, I'd give him about an A to an A- right now because everything else, he checks every other box. First of all, he united the Louisville fan base, and this is a very fractured fan base, a very frustrated fan base over the last 6, 7, 8 years. The Rick Pitino stuff off the court, Chris Mack on the court. And so it's funny, I remember even talking to my buddy Nick Coffey on his radio show about 3-4 weeks ago, and even he said he didn't realize how much Kenny Payne was going to unite the fan base. A former player, won a national championship there. The players all like them. The players all respect him. And so that's the first part of this grade, is that because he's an alum and a revered alum, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. He is going to have time to do it his way. He is going to have time to build his staff his way. He's saying that he's taking his sweet time with the staff. Did hire Nolan Smith from Duke. We'll talk about that in a minute. Did hire Danny Manning. But he said, I'm going to be meticulous with my staff. I'm going to be meticulous with my roster. But it starts with the fact that everybody on campus is pretty much behind this one near universally. And so because of that, it just makes it so much easier for success when everybody is going in the same direction. Beyond the fact that he is revered, like I said, first of all, he's knocked out the hiring process so far on his coaching staff. Gets Nolan Smith, young, kind of super dynamic recruiter from Duke. Obviously, his dad, is kind of from the same area as Kenny Payne, Milt Wagner, all that good stuff. So Nolan Smith comes to Louisville. Danny Manning, former college basketball head coach at Wake Forest, at Tulsa. He comes to join Louisville's staff. And so you start to talk about the staff coming together and now the roster coming together as well. Now, right now, it's very early, but this is really why we hired Kenny Payne, right? This is why Louisville hired Kenny Payne. This is why we like the hire. I didn't say we as I'm a Louisville fan, but why we like the hire. The one thing that there's no doubt about with Kenny Payne, he's going to recruit at a really, really high level because he has those long-standing relationships in the grassroots circuit. We all get it. We all understand how recruiting works. It's a relationship-based business. And when you're recruiting at Kentucky, you are recruiting the best of the best. Remember, he was an assistant coach at Kentucky for years. And so when he is recruiting at Kentucky, he has access to all sorts of people. He's recruiting at the highest level, and he knows what it takes to get the elite recruits on campus. And so I'm very bullish of what he's going to be able to do in recruiting. I'm very bullish of the fact that he's coming in at the time of the transfer portal, where I believe his network of contacts is going to play an even bigger role than it would have even 4, 5, 6 years ago pre-transfer portal. So I love everything about Kenny Payne. United the fan base, great coaching staff. I think he is going to crush it in recruiting. We'll figure out all the in-game stuff later. But this guy, let me put it this way. This time last year, and we're going to talk about Mike Woodson in a few minutes, but this time last year, Mike Woodson crushed it in all the off-the-court stuff, hiring a coaching staff, recruiting, transfer portal, etc. I think Kenny Payne is going to be that guy this year. Staying in the ACC, Jon Scheyer. I got to tell you, I got to give this guy an A as well. And here's the thing, right? He's never going to be Coach K. There's only one Coach K, greatest coach to ever do it. And I know some of us don't like Coach K. He's the greatest college basketball coach of all time, okay? But at the same time, while we can accept that Jon Scheyer is never going to be Coach K, I was worried when he took over. how do you keep that standard of excellence at what the Duke level is? Because remember, at Duke, it's not just about this. It's about you have to schedule the biggest games, win the biggest games, recruit the best players, be the biggest brand in college basketball. That is a lot for a 33, 34-year head coach. And much like Kenny Payne, we're going to learn about all the X's and O's on the court stuff down the road. But off the court, he's doing about as well as you possibly can, okay? I talked about this the other day. There is a legitimate argument to be made. You're going to laugh at me. There is a legitimate argument to be made that recruiting has picked up since Coach K left and retired as Duke's head coach. In total, Duke, of course, the number one recruiting class in 2022. They have 4 of the top 13 players committed to play at Duke this coming year. And then, oh, by the way, 2023, they're basically done recruiting 2023 as well. They have 5 of the top 30 players committed, 5 stars in some recruiting rankings, no worse than 4 5-stars. This is in the 2023 class, guys that are juniors going into their senior years. So Jon Scheyer is going to, before he ever coaches a game, essentially sign back-to-back number 1 classes. That won't become official till November, but he is cleaning up in recruiting. We're going to see what he does off the court, or on the court, but off the court, it can't get much better than this. Let's go to the Big East. 3 coaching hires in the Big East. And let's start with the one that I think it's hard to argue is the best, and that's Sean Miller at Xavier. I would go ahead and give that about an A-. And look, I've obviously talked a ton of Sean Miller on this show. We had him on the show for 45 minutes. He talked about everything that happened at Arizona, the positives, the negatives, this, that. So the only reason that I can't give Sean Miller an A to an A+ is because there are still looming NCAA things going on at Arizona, and there's a chance, and he talked about it on this show, I'm not, sharing, secrets here, that he's going to get suspended for his role in the Arizona NCAA investigation. At the same time, if you read the report, it's pretty conclusive that Sean Miller is really only found guilty of, failure to monitor. In other words, he is guilty of not monitoring his assistant coaches strongly enough. And I'll tell you this, I don't think Xavier or anyone else hires him unless they do a thorough background and feel like he is not getting a massive either suspension or show cause. So if we're to assume that at worst Sean Miller gets 6 games, Xavier just went out and hired probably the most accomplished on-the-court coach that was hired this coaching cycle. We know Kenny Payne can recruit. We know Jon Scheyer can recruit. We know Sean Miller can recruit, and we know he wins a lot of games as well. And I've talked about it before. I understand the frustration from Arizona fans that he never made a Final Four, but this guy, in his time at both Arizona and previously at Xavier, 4 Elite Eights, 7 Sweet 16s. I was at one of those Elite Eight games. It was a 1-point loss in overtime. He lost to UConn, my alma mater, in the 2011 Elite Eight against Kemba Walker by 1 point. And so I bring it up to say there's all this talk, Sean Miller never made a Final Four. He made 4 Elite Eights, 2 of them he lost by 1 point, 1 in overtime. And so, he was a play or 2 away from getting Arizona to at least one Final Four, if not multiple ones. So you talk about the success that he had. By the way, you want a crazy stat on Sean Miller. In terms of the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-12, he has the 3rd highest winning percentage in the history of the conference behind only John Wooden and Lute Olson. The guy can coach. The guy knows X's and O's. It'll be interesting to see him go back to Xavier where he had success. Obviously, they're now in the Big East. I will say the Big East is a tougher conference overall than the Pac-12 ever was when he was in there. So that'll be curious and that'll be interesting. But this guy's a great coach. He's a dogged recruiter. I think he's going to have success. I don't know what success is at Xavier. I don't know if that's, Elite Eight, Sweet 16s. But we saw a few years ago, Chris Mack got him to a number 1 seed. They've made multiple Elite Eights under multiple different coaches, including not only Sean Miller, but a guy I'm going to talk about in a minute. And so I bring it up to say, I got to give Sean Miller an A to an A- as well because he is the most accomplished coach that got hired. Xavier knocked it out of the park. Second coach in the Big East that got hired. Sounds familiar. You might know his name. Shaheen Holloway from St. Peter's to Seton Hall. I'll go ahead and give that one a B+, and for a few reasons. Look, this guy was obviously, it goes without saying, he was, in terms of coaching, the breakout star of this NCAA tournament. And what's so cool is, you're getting old. I remember Shaheen Holloway in the McDonald's All-American game, and I think it was 96, playing with Kobe Bryant. It's crazy to see it come full circle, and I still remember that game vividly because that was the days before YouTube, before Rivals.com, before Scout, before 24/7. You want to watch high school basketball players, you had one chance. It was the McDonald's All-American game. I remember Shaheen Holloway playing. And so I only bring it up because to see him come full circle and be the breakout star of the NCAA tournament, like that's awesome. And I am so excited to see him at the now high major level. He played at Seton Hall. I can't wait to see what he does as the head coach at Seton Hall, where he's obviously going to have a bigger stage, be able to recruit a better caliber of player. The only reason I can't rank him higher is for a few reasons. One, if you look at the track record before this year, he was a very good coach, but he wasn't elite by any stretch. 10-22 in year 1, 18-12 in year 2, 14-11 during COVID in year 3. This year finished second in the league behind Rick Pitino and Iona before he gets into the NCAA tournament and makes an Elite Eight. So I have to be fair because it's kind of one of those deals, right, where, if Kentucky makes a few more shots and knocks him out in round 1, I'm not talking about him as an A or an A+. And so I have to be fair. I think he's going to be awesome at Seton Hall. But I think the other thing about Seton Hall that we also have to consider that I think is kind of interesting, I don't think their history is as good as you think it is. And so the idea, this guy just made an Elite Eight at St. Peter's. History tells us, I don't know if he's going to make an Elite Eight at Seton Hall, okay? This is kind of mind-blowing. Seton Hall, Kevin Willard just left. We're going to talk about him in a minute. He left for Maryland. He was there 12 years. He made he won one NCAA tournament game in 12 years. Now, it took him 4 or 5 years to get it going, but he made multiple NCAA tournaments, one NCAA tournament win. Seton Hall has not been to the Sweet 16 since 2000. They have not made the Elite Eight since 1991. And so this idea that just because Shaheen Holloway had a great run at St. Peter's, that it's going to be consistent like that at Seton Hall, history just doesn't say it's going to. I do think he's going to crush in recruiting. I think he's going to crush in Jersey. Kids obviously love playing for him. But I can't give him more than about a B+ because Seton Hall is just a really tough place to win. We're going to talk about it a little bit with Kevin Willard in a minute. But I love the hire. It was the only guy that Seton Hall could potentially hire. They got the guy that they wanted. They got the guy that the fan base wanted. They got a guy that is going to knock it out of the park there. Final hire in the Big East. This one may have slipped through the cracks because I think it happened Final Four weekend. Butler waited until April 1st to fire their head coach, LaVall Jordan, so they could save buyout money. And then they went and got a familiar name. His name's Thad Matta. And so Thad Matta's kind of in that Sean Miller mold of he previously coached, not only, he coached at Xavier too, actually, but he coached at Butler for 1 year. And he has ties to the program, and now he is returning. And he's kind of like Sean Miller. And you just talk about the most accomplished coaches that have got hired this year. Doesn't get much more accomplished than Thad Matta. 2 Final Fours, including a national championship game appearance in 2007, 4 Elite Eights in his career, 6 Sweet 16s. That's a ton of accomplishment. And so if we're strictly talking about Thad Matta's on-the-court accomplishments, I mean, he's right up there with Sean Miller. He's right up there with any of these guys that got hired in terms of the most accomplished. Now, my big concern is he left Ohio State because of health issues. And everybody that knows him says that they're better, but you just don't know. And you just don't know what the wear and tear of being a full-time head coach, of being on planes, of being on buses, of traveling all across the country. You don't know what it's going to do to him. But what I would also say is, so far so good with Thad Matta. First of all, I think he's a little bit younger than people realize. He's only 54 years old, which, he's not a spring chicken, but you'd feel like he's much older considering that he spent, 13 years at Ohio State. He got the Ohio State job in 2004. My math isn't great there, but that's about 37 years old when he got that job. And so I just bring it up to say that he's younger than we think. And if he can stay healthy, he could have a good 10, 12 years on the sideline at Butler. The other thing I do like about Thad Matta, I have the concerns with the health. But I also he seems to be embracing the transfer portal and the new world of college basketball. It's really interesting. A lot of these guys that have been out for a while, I worry about them when they come back in. But one, he was around the Indiana program last year, kind of in an advisory role for Mike Woodson. But then 2, I just wondered, what is it going to be like when he gets back into this sport when the sport is so much different than it was when he left it a few years ago? Well, he seems to be embracing it. Butler has had a bunch of kids on campus. They've already gotten a commitment or 2 out of the portal. He seems to be embracing it. So the health is obviously a factor. But other than that, I would say I really like the hire. I give it a B just because I just don't know how long health-wise he can hold up. Let's go to the Big Ten. As I just told you a minute ago, Seton Hall, of course, opened and hired Shaheen Holloway. That's because Kevin Willard went to Maryland. And I'll give this hire about a B+ for this reason. First of all, on the plus side, Maryland was really the only school that is a power conference job that went out and got a sitting head coach from another power conference school. And so I give Maryland credit. They were the first job to open. Mark Turgeon resigned, late November, early December. I forget exactly when it was. And they said, we believe we're a premier job. We are going to get the guy that proves it. And they were really the only ones that went out and got an established head coach in Kevin Willard. As I said, he spent 12 years at Seton Hall. He did make, it's kind of crazy, in his final 7 seasons. So first 5, it takes him a while to get going. Final 7 seasons, 5 NCAA tournaments, and of course, one of the years that he wasn't in the NCAA tournament was 2020. That was by far his best team. Miles Powell, first team All-American. That was a team that was good enough to go to the Final Four. And so why I like this hire a lot is this guy at Seton Hall, again, a job that's not easy to win at. I've talked to some people in the Big East. They're like, Aaron, if you've never been to the campus isn't that great. They play in Newark. It's kind of this weird thing where we think because they play in a big NBA arena, that this, that, the other thing. And I've talked to people, they're like, if a kid grows up in the Northeast, UConn's obviously a better school with a great campus. If you're going to stay in the New York, New Jersey area, you go to St. John's, you can play in Madison Square Garden. Seton Hall is a tough place to win, and Kevin Willard did a really good job there. And so now you go to a school like Maryland with more resources. The facilities aren't great, but they're working on them. And then, oh, by the way, the recruiting area that Kevin Willard is in, he has a chance to be really good. My only concern, the reason I can't put him higher, is what I said a minute ago. He only won 1 NCAA tournament game in 12 years at Seton Hall. And I don't blame him. I think it's a tough job. But never forget, Mark Turgeon, during his time at Maryland, he won at least 1 game in 4 tournaments. He won about 6-7 games in the NCAA tournament, and that wasn't enough. They forced him out. And so with Kevin Willard, I think it's a better job, but he is going to have to win in the tournament to appease this fan base still. I give it about a B+, A- because I really, really like the hire. Big 12, only job opening there. Jerome Tang, the longtime Baylor assistant, takes over at Kansas State. I give this one a B+, because this one's all over the place, okay? 1, Kansas State, I think it was time for change. Bruce Weber, if you remember, final game, he gets knocked out of the Big 12 tournament. He actually resigned a day later, but he does this big spiel about, I did it the right way, this is what I won, this is what I that. But the bottom line was, it seemed as though the fan base was ready for something new. A lot of empty seats, a lot of empty arenas. And so now Jerome Tang gets to take over as the longtime Baylor assistant. And what I would say is this is a guy that is really, really well respected in the industry. I don't know him personally, but was a 20-plus year assistant at Baylor. He was there from the bottom straight through multiple Elite Eights before they, of course, won a national championship 2 years ago. And so I think it'll be good to get fresh blood. He seems to be well connected. They have a couple big-time transfers that are going to be taking visits to campus, including Antoine Davis, the kid from Detroit. And so I bring it up to say, like I think this is going to be a really, really good hire. My problem that's concerning is 2 things. 1, Kansas State's a really hard job. Like I think because Frank Martin had success and then because Bruce Weber had success, we think, oh, anybody could win at Kansas State. It's a really hard job in a conference that even as the conference evolves, Texas, Oklahoma leaving for the SEC, that basketball league is going to be brutal. Kansas is still there. Baylor's still there. Texas Tech is still there. TCU's emerging. Oh, by the way, now Houston is coming into that league. Cincinnati is coming into that league. And so it's going to be a really, really tough place to win. And then the other thing, I'll just be honest, Jerome Tang didn't do this. It's the media. But they're trying to package him as the hot, long-time assistant that is getting a shot, and they're trying to compare him to Tommy Lloyd last year, who, of course, was the Arizona head coach. I don't like that for this reason. Tommy Lloyd inherited a great roster from Sean Miller. Now, Tommy Lloyd did an incredible job of taking that roster to the next level, getting them a number 1 seed. But to compare him to Tommy Lloyd, who inherited a roster that is going to have 2 first-round picks, Kansas State probably has the least talented roster in the Big 12. So I'm excited for Jerome Tang. I give him a B to a B+, just because I think he's inheriting a really tough situation, and to compare him to Tommy Lloyd doesn't make sense. 6 jobs. Let's get to the SEC. 6 jobs in the SEC, and I will try to be quick because I talked about the SEC last week, and obviously this segment is going a little bit long as it is. But first of all, in terms of the SEC, 6 jobs opened up really quickly. I'll grade them in a second, but to reiterate, Mississippi State, they hired the New Mexico State head coach Chris Jans. Missouri hired Cleveland State head coach Dennis Gates. Florida hired Todd Golden, the head coach at San Francisco. Matt McMahon, the Murray State head coach, friend of the Aaron Torres pod, goes to LSU. Lamont Paris, the former Chattanooga head coach, goes to South Carolina. and Mike White, former Florida coach, goes to Georgia. Let's grade him really quick. First of all, the hire that I like the most, and this isn't about who is going to have the most success, but who is going to have the most success relative to expectations. I actually think it's Chris Jans, the head coach that went from New Mexico State to Mississippi State and is now taking over there. I'll tell you this. I really, really, really like this hire. Okay, so Chris Jans, I don't want to call it a checkered background, but he had a situation off the court at he was at Bowling Green where he was let go. Then he goes to New Mexico State and just crushes it. And New Mexico State for their conference is a great job. But listen to these records overall. 28-6, 30-5, 25-6, 12-8 during the COVID year, 27-7 this year, including a first-round upset of UConn in the NCAA tournament. But why I like him is pretty straightforward. Mississippi State's a different deal. Mississippi State, you can't expect to just recruit the players that Kentucky's recruiting and recruit the players that Arkansas is recruiting and recruit the players that Tennessee is recruiting. It's a different job. You have to have a different kind of head coach. And I think Chris Jans knows the kinds of players that he's got to recruit to Mississippi State. He has a background in JUCO. At New Mexico State, he took a lot of transfers, and those are the kind of guys that you have to win with, and he has a very defined style of play that worked for him at Mississippi State. And so I love this hire because I think this is the right hire at the right time for the right school. Ben Howland, I don't think ever really had a plan. He's recruiting 5-stars. He's recruiting transfers. What's the deal? This guy has a plan. This guy's going to have success. Number 2 on the list, I would give Dennis Gates from Missouri also an A. This was the guy that was at Cleveland State. Obviously, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but 3 years at Cleveland State, wins Coach of the Year in his first year at Cleveland State. Second year, he makes the NCAA tournament. This year, they win the regular season, but lose in the conference tournament. And why I like this guy is pretty straightforward. First of all, he kind of gets the social media aspect of the job. They've taken a bunch of transfers already. And every single time he's tweeting out gifts and he's tweeting out this, he's tweeting out that. And I just feel like Missouri, kind of like Arkansas the last few years before Coach Musselman, before Eric Musselman got there, they just need a guy with a little juice. They need a guy with a little pizzazz, and that is who Dennis Gates is. And so I am truly, truly excited to see him because I think he gets what it takes to compete in the SEC. I said it a few weeks ago, but he was a longtime Florida State assistant. He's recruited the South. He's recruited the Southeast. He's recruited Atlanta. He's recruited Florida. He's recruited in the SEC footprint, even if he wasn't technically in the SEC. And so now he is in the SEC. He has the Midwest ties as well from his time at Cleveland State. And I just think he gets kind of the social media aspect of it. I think he gets the recruiting aspect of it. And he's a great coach, too. 20-11 this year, like I said, made the NCAA tournament last year. I give Dennis Gates an A for his job there. I'll tell you this guy, I've kind of flipped on a little bit. Todd Golden, the new head coach at Florida. I'll go ahead and give him in this hire a B+, okay? So when this hire first happened, I said, I don't like it. He's 36 years old, inherited a good program at San Francisco, very analytics-based. I don't know if he's going to make it in the SEC. Well, I still don't know if he's going to make it in the SEC, but I didn't know if he was going to make it in the SEC because I didn't know if he was going to recruit the kind of players that you have to recruit to win in the SEC. And so why do I bring it up? It is because of the fact that he's crushed it in the portal so far. They've signed 3 guys out of the portal. But first of all, they got their best player, Colin Castleton, back. But they signed this kid, Alex Fudge from LSU, who I think is really good. They signed Will Richard, a kid from Belmont, who's really good. And they signed a guard from VMI on Monday. And so Todd Golden, all of a sudden, he went from the analytics nerd a few weeks ago. I was calling him the analytics nerd. Now, I was telling my buddy Zach Kroll, who's come on this show before. Now I'm calling Todd Golden Young Sheldon, boy genius, like the TV show Young Sheldon, because this guy, he came to the SEC and right away has had immediate success in the portal. So I am excited. The analytics are great, but you need players, right? Nate Oates is an analytics guy, but he had great players. He had Herb Jones last year, who's an awesome NBA player, won the SEC Player of the Year. You need something besides the analytics, but I do like Todd Golden. I give him a B+. My boy Young Sheldon, Todd Golden. Next up, Matt McMahon, LSU. Give him a solid B. Listen. I've already talked a ton about Matt McMahon. I don't need to belabor the point. Inherited a basically impossible situation with Will Wade, but Will Wade also left him a ton of talent, and he wasn't able to keep most of that talent on the roster. As I mentioned, Alex Fudge committed to Florida. Brandon Murray, all-SEC freshman team, committed to Georgetown. Eric Gaines, really good guard, committed to UAB. Xavier Pinson, as I record, is still in the portal, has not committed, although he could commit any second by the time you listen to this. I believe he's down to Xavier, and Mississippi State. And so I bring it up because I like Matt McMahon, but at the same time, he did inherit a lot of talent. He wasn't able to keep it. To his credit, he has had some success in the portal to this point. But it's going to be wait and see. And it's going to be wait and see. And the other thing I would say, it's going to be really hard because there are some sort of NCAA sanctions coming. And so this guy is a guy that is about culture. It's about building it from the ground up. He did it at Murray State. I just think it's going to be really hard to do in the SEC in a situation where you are up against major NCAA sanctions. Lamont Paris, new head coach at South Carolina. 2 left. We'll get out of here. We'll take a quick break because this segment's going long. Lamont Paris, South Carolina, I give him a solid B. Listen, this guy, another really tough job. You look at South Carolina historically, they've never really been great at any point in their program's history for any extended period of time. So this is a hard job. This is a job, by the way, where he was at best their third choice. They went really hard after Sean Miller. Sean Miller ends up taking the Xavier job. They went really hard after Matt McMahon. Matt McMahon takes the LSU job. They end up with Lamont Paris, who I think was really good. The thing that I like about him, he was really aggressive in building Chattanooga, a team that made the NCAA tournament this year. He built them through the portal, okay? Well, guess what? That's what you got to do in the SEC, so we'll see what he does. As I record here, he really hasn't done all that much in the portal yet, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Finally, final coach in the power conferences that got hired this offseason, Mike White, goes from Florida to Georgia. At best, I can give this a B-. To me, it's really a C+, and here's why. On the one hand, I get the positives of Mike White. We'll talk about it in a second. But a couple things with Georgia. First of all, they were the first team to fire their head coach at the power conference level outside of Louisville and Maryland. They fired their head coach to get a jump start on the rest of the coaching carousel to get a head start. Yet they ended up with a guy that Florida fans could not push out the door fast enough. And so I can't get excited about a hire that the fan base isn't excited about and that the fan base who lost the head coach is thrilled that he's gone. That's why I can't get behind it. Now, I do understand the other perspective, which is Mike White basically made the NCAA tournament essentially every year at Florida. And if you can do that at Georgia, you can have a ton of success. You can get a statue built there because nobody has ever made the tournament year in and year out at Georgia. I'm just not sold that he can do it because he inherited a much better situation at Florida, never really got them over the hump except when Billy Donovan's players were there. And so because of it, I give him a C. Those are all your major coaching hires. I'm not going to go through all of them again. But again, 2 in the ACC, Kenny Payne and John Shire, Louisville and Duke respectively. 3 in the Big East, Sean Miller at Xavier. Shaheen Holloway, formerly of St. Peter's at Seton Hall. Thad Matta is back at Butler. In the Big Ten, Maryland, Kevin Willard. Big 12, Jerome Tang at Kansas State. And then the 6 in the SEC, Chris Jans, Dennis Gates, Todd Golden, Matt McMahon, Lamont Paris, Mike White. By the way, 2 other noteworthy A-10 hires. How about the Atlantic 10? Frank Martin, the Intimidator. They call Dale Earnhardt the Intimidator? No. Frank Martin's the Intimidator. He is at UMass and friend of the Aaron Torres podcast. We'll get him on at some point. Archie Miller is the head coach at Rhode Island. I like both of those hires pretty well. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'll take a quick break. We're going to come back to a quick transfer portal segment. It's going to be like 8 to 10 minutes because I wanted to get to where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. But we'll hit on some of the big news and notes of the transfer portal. I'll be back in a minute.